After the fall of the Bretton Woods system, the IMF still survived in its role of lender to countries and tended to specialize in loans to small developing economies that were having fiscal policies in many cases not balanced, so having too much public spending, and so having a large currency crisis as a consequence. So the IMF specialized in making loans to these countries and promoting reforms to make sure that then these loans were paid back. And the IMF still has this role, but in the reading that has been posted on a Blackboard, we see that recently the IMF seems to have taken off a new type of assignment, which is unprecedented in its history. So, in particular, we all know that we all have heard of the very troubling situation of the Greek economy, which started with several European, in particular French and German banks that had heavily invested into Greek debt, Greek sovereign debt, after the entrance of Greece in the euro area, in the eurozone. So it became pretty evident that the Greek government was not going to be able to pay back its financial liabilities to these German and French banks, and there was a concern that the exposition of these banks to Greek debt was so large that this would have caused the bankruptcy for these very large banks in France and Germany, and as a consequence, financial panic in the European Union and possibly in the global economy. So even if the public finances of Greece were clearly in distress, and so in that case lending extra money would have had very low hopes of obtaining a repayment, the IMF decided, under the guidance of Dominique Strauss-Kahn, to make a large loan to Greece, trying to stabilize the panic on financial markets in Europe. This is a new territory for the IMF because, as you can imagine, it's way easier to have a political influence on economies that are just developing, in which institutions, market institutions are not well developed, in which the rule of law is not well respected, and so on and so forth. It's way harder to have a strong political influence in a modern and mature democracy, or relatively mature democracy, because Greece is a relatively recent democracy, parliamentary democracy, but still it's part of the euro area, and it's extremely hard to interfere with the politics of Greece, even if you are an institution like the IMF. So indeed the result was that Greece missed the first payment on the IMF loan, putting the IMF in an awkward position because it seemed clear in the first place that this important loan that was given to Greece would have hardly been repaid. However, it sems that by making that loan in a moment in which there was a lot of indecisiveness between the members of the European Union that were not willing to concede more loans to Greece. So it seems that the IMF kind of like saved the European Union from a very dangerous financial panic. And so this might be introducing a new role for the IMF in the global economy as a force that stabilizes financial markets in episodes of turmoil, if you wish. Clearly, this would imply that we would have to redefine how countries contribute to the IMF, and large issues of governance of the IMF would emerge. But so it's this reading is interesting because it gives us a perspective on what might be the future for this institution.